In this series of videos, we're going to learn more about CSS. So we'll learn some more CSS properties and how to go about using them. We're going to start with this page, and the only style that it has set is it has color set on the heading 2s. So you see this blue color showing up there. It also has in the style sheet all of these class style blocks, and if you look in the HTML, there's class set to these values already. So here's a section with class equal to leading that goes with this leading style block, and then there's images. All the rest are images where each individual image has got a class set. So we'll be adding style to each of these things as we go. To start with, I want to talk about font. We haven't done much with font, but that's something we often want to change in a web page. Before I begin, I want to set some style on this very first section. So at the very beginning, I have a section called leading, and notice that it begins up here and ends down here, and class is set to leading. So first I'm going to center the text, and we know how to do this with text align. And I do that, and now it centers. I don't want it to spread all the way across, though I kind of want to build this into a block. So I'm going to give it a width, and I'm just going to set the width at 520 pixels. And there, I've got that. And now notice I have the text is centered, but the heading itself, the section itself is not centered. And so that's not quite what I want. I do want the text to center, but I want the whole section to be centered as well. So now I'll have to use the second approach to centering. So the second approach to centering includes three things. The display has to be set to block. Sections are already set to block, so I don't have to change that. A specific width has to be set. We've already done that. And the third thing is that the margins need to be the same. And so the easiest way to do that is to simply set margin to auto, and that will do the right and left margin the same. The top and bottom don't need to be the same, it's just the left and right margins need to be the same, and that's the one we were missing. And then that positions that section right in the middle. So now the text align is centered and the whole section itself is centered within the page. So I've got the centering taken care of. Now I want to add a border, and this one I just want to be on the bottom. So I'm going to add a border. I want it to be this orange color, and there, I'm going to put that there. I want it to be dashed, so something a little bit different, and about 3 pixels. There you go. Now I've got a border around it. This lets me know that padding would be lovely. So I'm going to add some padding. I'm just going to put 12 pixels on the top and bottom and 15 pixels on the left and right. All right, that gives me a little bit of space to work with. And now I really don't just want a box all the way around it. I really only want the bottom border. So I'm going to use border bottom, and that way I won't get all of it. And let's see how that looks. Okay, so there I've dressed it up a little bit. I kind of set that section apart from the rest of the web page, and that's what I wanted to work with. But now I want to change the font in this section. And there are some interesting things to learn about fonts, and CSS has a tutorial about it. Teaches you what sans serif is, what serif is, that it has those some type of little edges, decorative edges, and about that there are basic ones that you can refer to. And when you want to set font, this is the common way to do it. You put font family, and then you list 3 different fonts. And the reason for this, while I'm here, let me tell you that the reason this first one is in quotes is because it has a space in it. So whenever you have a font family name that has a space, you have to put it in quotes. If it doesn't have any spaces, it doesn't need to be quoted. And here you put 3. And the reason is, first, you want them to try to find this font. If they can't find it, then move to this one. And if they can't find it, move to that one. Now, where are they looking? They're looking on their own computer. So when you publish a web page and it's delivered to somebody's computer, they're looking at it on their computer. The browser looks on the computer for that font. If it finds it, it uses it. So if it finds this first one, it will use it. If it doesn't find it, it'll go to the next one. If it doesn't find that, it'll go to the last one. And so you always want to make sure your last one is a very generic family. And that's really what this talks about, is how to make sure you've got this really generic family so it's for sure going to be found. But there's an interesting way to add font that's not included here, that what you can do is you can define your own font and include that file in your resources, and so you can supply the font. So you're not dependent on the user having the font there. And that's what we're going to do. So if we want to use our own font, we use what's called the @font_face rule. And here I'm simply going to create a font that I can use. And I get to say, first I'm going to say the font family, and guess what? I get to make this up. I'm creating this font, and so I can make up the details of what. And I'm going to call this one Droid. And I'm going to use the source. So one of the properties I can set in @font_face is the source, and this is where I get to use my own file. So here in resources, I have a file called droid_sans.ttf, and this is actually a font family. If I double click on that file, notice it will open up and I can see what that file will look like. But you can find these font files simply by doing a search on the internet. And there's lots of free font files. There's a variety of font extensions, right? The last three characters, so the file extension. But there's some that work better than others. Let me see if I can find it here. There you go. So TTF and OTF as the format is accepted by all the major browsers, and WOFF is as well. Others are not supported as much, so you probably want to stay with, depending on how broad your audience is, to stay with these ones that are widely supported. So I can go here and I'm going to use that file in my resources file, and for the source I put the URL, and then in parentheses I put the name of it. So it's droid_sans.ttf. Now this is in my resources folder, but so is my style sheet. So I don't have to go anywhere. It's just where you are, look for this file. So here I am in that style sheet. Just look where you are to find that. So now I've just created it, and this hasn't made any difference to my web page. So when I refresh this, it doesn't make any difference. It didn't change the font at all. So now I can use this. All I've done is include it so I can use it. So now I can use it here, font family, and I just use that name that I called it, and I called it Droid. And I do save, and I refresh. And there you go. And it actually changed the font. Notice that the bold stayed for that heading. It was already bolded. That's a style that's added by the heading itself. And all the font in this section, I only added to the leading section, but that font has now been changed. So this is a fun way to be able to set font families without having to worry about whether it's on the user's computer or not, is to download and install your own and create your own font face. And you can add other values to it. So there's other values that you can set. You can set font weight, and so there are other things in there that you can set if you want. Another thing, and there's more information about fonts. So font style, you can do normal, italic, and oblique. Font size you can adjust. It's recommended that you use EMs for font size. You can use pixels or EMs. 1 EM is the standard size, and then you make it bigger. It makes it bigger, you make it smaller, it makes it smaller, and there's examples here. And font weight can be normal or bold. So lots of different font things you can set. Here all I did was set the font family and imported a font file that I could use.